I grew up in Auckland, New Zealand, where I struggled with three things in my life. I struggled with my relationship with my parents, loved ones. I struggled with school, and I struggled with the idea of religion, my mother being the most religious person in my life. And eventually I ended up having a broken relationship, with my father. There were times where he'd try to speak to me about things, but I was never really able to connect with him because, he was old school. He was the sort of man that would never tell me that he loved me or that he cared about me or anything like that. And sometimes I'd expect it because, growing up, going to school, I used to see kids interact with their parents and hearing their parents talk to them about how much they loved them. And for me, I was wondering if there was something wrong with me, but it was just the way my father was, and it's just the way they were back in the islands. And you see, my parents, they grew up in the islands and they came to New Zealand to start a family, and that's where we were raised. And here's me trying to see who I was, where I fit in, and I ended up hating life because I didn't know who I was. And because I didn't know who I was, I ended up breaking relationships. And in the end, I had this broken relationship with my siblings, and I had this broken relationship with my parents. And I ended up wanting to just give up on life and just die. And I remember just being depressed, and there was just so many things going on in my mind, and I was just struggling with so much things. And I came to a point in my life where I realized that what am I good for? I didn't know what was out there for me. And I came to a point where I fell into a dark place in my life, and I was really depressed because I had broken relationships everywhere. I had broken relationships with my siblings, with loved ones, people who were close to me. And eventually I had this broken relationship with my father. And I got so depressed. I was in a very dark place in my life. And I was thinking about, at a point where I was thinking about, taking my own life at times. And so the only thing I could think about doing was just, escaping New Zealand and coming to Australia to try and start a new life. And it wasn't until my son was born, and when my son was born, God taught me what love was, and he started to piece my life back together again through my son. And through my son, he gave me a reason to live again. And here I am getting that second wind. Here I am thinking about life again and wanting to live again. And for him, I decided that I wanted to give him the best life. And I wanted to be a father. I wanted to be a good person. And so through him, I was able to reconnect with people that I had broken relationships with. And eventually, I was able to reconnect with my father. And here's me and my son, my father in the same room. And my father talking to me about how much he loved me and how much, God has changed his life and his journey with God. And he's introducing to me this person by the name of Jesus. And, for so many years, he's been trying to show me who Jesus was, but we didn't have that relationship. So it wasn't until we actually sat down here in Australia where he actually looked me in the eyes and spoke to me about who Jesus was to him and how Jesus saved his life. And so here I am thinking about how God was able to change his life, and I started reflecting on my own life. And I started looking back, and I started seeing footprints, and I could see Jesus in my journey, and I can already see that he was the person that was helping me to get through the most difficult stages in my life. And all of a sudden, he's the person that's reconnecting me again, because he's a God that loves to reconcile and reconnect loved ones again. And so he's reconnected me with my son, and then he's reconnected me with my father. All of a sudden, I found myself in college being given a second chance. And you see, I hated school. I was kicked out of school at the age of 15. And here I am, God giving me the opportunity to go to college again and study, which is kind of ironic because the two things I hated more than life was I hated school and I hated religion. And the first thing that God impressed upon my heart was to go back to school to study religion. I can see him helping me get through every single struggle that I went through in life. And it didn't mean that the struggle came to an end, but God helped me to get through every single struggle that I went through in life. And I became stronger, I became wiser, I became mentally strong to be able to deal with the challenges that life throws at me. It reminds me of when I first wanted to try powerlifting for the very first time. I approached a man that was in his late 60s who was a former champion. I approached him and I asked him if he could train me. I said to him, I can lift. And he asked me the question, how much can he squat? And I said to him, I could squat 180 kilos for 10 reps. And I said it so confidently. And he looked at me and he said to me, I'll meet you at the gym 6 o'clock tomorrow morning sharp. So here's me, already there at 5:30. I'm pumped and I'm excited because I wanted to prove to him that I could do 180 kilos, 10 reps easy. We get there, we warmed up, we get to 180, and I lifted the bar off the rack and I counted 1, 2, 3. And when I got to the 4th rep, I was flying up, and in my heart and mind, I was like, I'm in my zone. I'm about to prove to this guy that I can actually do it. By the time I got to 5 and 6, I felt the pain in my legs. When I got to 7, I struggled. And when I was struggling to get up, all I heard was a voice in the background say, 1. I turned around and I looked at him and I said, 1? That was 7. And he said to me, 1, go again. And I looked at him and I put the bar back on the rack and I looked at him and I said, hey, that was 7. I'm about to go to 8. I don't know where you were looking. And he said to me, listen, if you want to train powerlifting, we don't count the reps that we're comfortable with. We count the ones that we struggle with, because it's through the struggle that we grow mentally and physically. Well, I started reflecting on my life and I started thinking about the struggle that I went through, so I can look back on my journey and I can see why God allowed me to go through the struggle, because he was looking at growing me spiritually. You know, every single time now there's a trial ahead of me or the struggle that I have to go through, I don't have to fear anymore, because I know that Jesus will help me to get through it, so that every time I go through the difficult stages of life, or every time I go through the stages, that I am able to look to him and see and be confident in the fact that because Jesus got me through the most difficult stages in life, that he could get me through the next stages, the next struggle, or whatever else that comes against me. God was able to grow me mentally, physically, and spiritually.